All right, we got our first question, so I'll just go with this one. Angela, do you want to say your question or?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to ask, what's a day at Skydance like exactly? Like, how does it go? And stuff, I guess, just a general, what's it like?
Yeah. So I've only had experience at Skydance during the pandemic period. So my perspective would be a from home perspective. So usually, um, depending on the day, if it's a day of a new assignment, I probably have a meeting set up with the head of story, or sometimes also including the director if they need to be more specific with the assignment. I'd have that meeting. We'd have a chat. We would read through the script together, and then we'd see if I have any questions on it. They'd tell me the specific assignment, like, oh, explore this part, or um, draw from the script. And then yeah, I kind of start thumbnailing my ideas and kind of move forward with the storyboarding process. And it's usually a cycle of that. And then once I'm done with that, I pitch. If they like it, it moves on, and then another assignment will come in a similar fashion.
Oh, that's really, really nice. Do you also have like time to like make breaks in between, or do you just like, do you have like a scheduled time to have your breaks, or do you
Yeah.
just keep going?
Well, I guess for me personally, I work better with a sense of structure. So I kind of assume, even though I'm working from home,
Yeah, yeah.
I assume like I'm working at work. So I would start at 9, like how work would start. I would stop at 12, was when most people take a lunch break for an hour, and then I get back to it till 6. So with that, it kind of gives me like a good headspace to, work towards like a certain time of the day. Yeah, so that's usually how I work. And then maybe
Oh,
I take a
nice.
walk. If I'm looking at the computer for too long, I might take a quick walk around.
Nice, nice. That's good. That's good. Oh, next question. We have Ryan. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah. I guess my actually wait. I can have two questions. Should I just ask the one that came first?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I'm just wondering, how should we properly navigate dry spells in employment as like seasons and like as the contracts that we sign into end, so we don't end up out of work. Basically because in some other like webinars that I've been to, like I hear that like usually it's best to I think like let people let people know like maybe 2 months in advance that like your contract is ending, so like you could like try to prepare for I guess to like I guess jump over to the next um jump over to the next contract so you don't end up with like a spell um of like unemployment. But also like what should we know if something like that does happen to us, and what should we do to I guess get back into the game per
Yeah.
se?
Yeah, it's definitely tougher with like shorter contract jobs, especially I think in TV animation. There's more of that where you work for a season and then there's kind of a hiatus, and then you might be called back if they make a second, third season, or maybe they don't continue it and you have to go look for the next gig. I think it's important to keep in communication with your team if you're currently on a series. Talk to the producer and people in production, like, and understand the timeline of the current season. If you know it's about to come to an end, you might want to start preparing your portfolio, or start talking to people about the next gig and kind of line that up. I know some friends who they they kind of know at the back of their head when the season's coming to an end, And depending on what kind of show you're on, if they know it's going to definitely be renewed, some of them take the hiatus like almost a mini vacation before they go back for the next season. But sometimes you might not know if it's going to be renewed. So again, it's about trying your best to communicate and make sure you're in the know of how your show is going, I think. Mhm.
So I guess like basically like it's more just like I guess talking with the producers or the directors.
Yeah, like just talking, making sure you're on the same page as everyone. And I know sometimes you can't be in control of all these decisions being made, and one day it could be A and another day it could be B. So I think just trying your best to be in communication with everybody.
All right, cool, thanks.
Thank you for your question, Ryan. So our next question actually was something that multiple people asked, but I'm gonna let the question go. Isha, do you want to ask your question on camera?
Oh, yeah, hi. It's pronounced Aisha, by the
Aisha,
way.
thank you.
I'm also from Singapore, but I'm currently studying animation in the States. So I think like a lot of my concerns lie in like what was navigating employment like for you as in the animation industry in the States while you're like an international student, or like international person, because I think like there's like multiple guest speakers that have come and they've talked about it briefly, and it's like not the easiest process. So I would like to hear about it, especially from someone who's also from Singapore. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Aisha. Yeah, it's tough. You know, you kind of come in knowing you're an international person, and you know it's going to be harder for you in some ways that local people might not experience. And from day one, just kind of knowing my position, I did a lot of research as much as I can online to start off of what it takes to work in animation in America, and also what it takes to keep working in animation. So that's kind of looking at your visa options. I was lucky in the sense that my school had the international department in my school had a few workshops where they invited an immigration lawyer, and they kind of did a short presentation for us on the different visas. And it's just kind of taking copious notes on all the different kinds. So we have the O1 and we have the H1B, which is the most common that artists go for, I think. And that's a whole presentation on its own of how specifically to get that. But I think it's not going to be, you know, the easiest thing to have that kind of hovering at the back of your head while you're at school, for sure. But it's important to, as an international person who wants to work in America or anywhere overseas, to be in the know of what it takes, what you need to prepare in advance. I've seen a few people who kind of start getting into it maybe a little bit too at the last minute, and that's when everything scrambled, like, oh, I should have done this more, I should have get more credentials here, or tried to put my film into my animated film into festivals or things like that. So it's just important to read up, and if you have a good international department at school, you can ask them more questions specifically, or they can direct you in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
hope that
Thank you.
helps.
Thank you for your question. And for the next one, Tim, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, sure thing. My question was based around like timelines in a production. How fast are your turnarounds from script to rough pass, and then getting notes and
If
things
you're
of that sort?
interested, it's Singaporeans, they're like asking the industry professional.
Yes. How what's the timeline? Is that right? What's the timeline to
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I think so. There's no like general, for me, from my experience so far, there hasn't been, I can't really tell you if it will take a week specifically or 2 weeks. it really depends on the script I'm getting. And usually I'm talking with the head of story about how long they're gonna give me. Sometimes when we're having to hit deadlines during crunch time, they might not want it to be too clean and they just want to get it to the rough pass as soon as possible. So it could be as quick as a week to get it from the new script to a version of it where we can send it to editorial. So that could be one case. And another case, when we have a lot more time, the head of story might want to see the roughs in a week or so. And depending on who your head of story is, they might be very, relaxed about it. And, oh, if you need more time, just let me know. But I think like a week would be good to look back and see if we need more changes. Then he might give you 2-3 more days, depending on how many changes it takes. So I guess it depends on the time of year of the film and what is required on how fast you need to get your stuff turned in.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, board artists have to deal with so much and you keep revising. Okay, the next question, Emil, did I say that correctly?
Emil.
Emil, okay. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah. When you were first looking for work, did you find it more helpful to kind of stick to your strengths, like sticking with like feature style boarding versus TV style boarding, or trying to stick into like a certain genre that you felt like you were best boarding at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had a lot of those kinds of questions since first year of school, how to navigate making your portfolio. So I was always asking, I knew from the beginning I wanted to work in feature films. So I think all my boards, all my pieces in my portfolio are more feature style boarding. I didn't really specifically aim to do TV style. Yeah, but then I would talk to recruiters and artists who work in the industry about how do you showcase your boards? Should you be showing comedy in one, action, and then drama, or should, as someone at the time, I felt like my forte was more in drama and specific character acting. I was asking, should I have more of that? And I definitely got a mix, but I think the general consensus is they do want you to be able to tackle all the points. They want to see some comedy, they want to see some action, and they want to see that you can do intimate acting moments. So I think it's important to hit that. But if you do think you have a forte, like you're a big comedy person, you want to show them all these like comedic ideas you have, definitely hone in on that. And I think naturally it will show more. You could do a board sequence that is overall very comedic and has a lot of moments to show that you're comedically strong, but you can also have a moment in there that shows these characters being vulnerable and having a dramatic scene. So that's kind of how you kind of do both. You show that you're very drawn to comedy, but also hitting all the marks and showing companies that, oh, I can do it all if you ask me to do it. So yeah.
Sweet, thank you. That's very, very helpful.
Yes, thank you. All right, next, should we have Munam? Did I say that right? Would you like to ask your question?
Oh, I think he's muted. Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, Moon, you're muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Anyway,
no worries.
Yeah. So name is Monam. I'm from Pakistan and I'm in USA right now. I graduated from university where I study of Bachelor of Arts last year. And right now I'm doing some freelance project. And question I want to ask is that I applied for the story artist position. Do I need to have the 5+ experience, or or I can apply after I graduate from university?
When you say 5+ experience, are they talking about story artist experience? I guess.
Yes.
I don't think you do. I know a lot of applications have the general like, oh, must have at least 2 years of storyboarding experience or this or that. And that's a general idea what type of job it is. Like you wouldn't see that in maybe a story revisionist job because that's more of an entry-level job. But I don't think that should stop you from applying, because if your portfolio shows that you're able to do the job, that's the number one thing they're looking for, and not so much how many years you've done this. If you have like 1 year under your belt and your portfolio shows that you can board for this show or this movie, yeah, that wouldn't stop them from hiring you, I think.
Yeah, I see. And even if am I able to email to recruiter if I update my portfolio and stuff when I apply at the time?
Yeah, definitely. Keep emailing recruiters every time you update your portfolio to kind of keep your name at the top of their list, or keep them in the know of, okay, this person is still looking for jobs. If anything comes up that fits their stuff, to contact you. Yeah, I think it's important to keep bothering them.
That's good. Thanks.
All right, thank you for the question. Kaylee, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Kaylee. I'm also Singaporean, so like super cool to see like more Singaporeans in the industry. So my question is, what are some habits that you've developed during your time at CalArts which helped you get to like the job that you have right now?
I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me is maybe how to organize my time. At CalArts, every year we had to make a short animated film on our own. And that takes up a significant amount of time. And then you have school assignments that are separate. And then you had searching for a job or an internship every year. Yeah, so I think really being able to organize my time and being strict with myself of when I had when I had my film in front of me, kind of setting deadlines of when to hit each mark, like this on this date animation should be done, or rough animation. By this date this other thing should be done. I should be talking to my composer by this date, and just kind of planning that out so that is taken out of my head. And of course, everyone works differently. I've seen people work straight ahead with no concrete schedules and they end up doing great. But for me personally, I needed that to keep everything under control. Because yeah, when I had spare time from the film, I had to do my work. And then when I didn't have any more of that to do, I had to work on my portfolio. So that would be another kind of sheet that I would have written out of, okay, by this date, I should have 2 ideas for my portfolio. By this date, I should have sketched out the first one. Yeah, and kind of, yeah, in a way, what is the term? Departmentalizing, like kind of dividing my year into being able to tackle all those things the best way I can.
Yeah, that's great. Super helpful because I'm working on my thesis next year. So
yeah. Yeah. And I think that will these kinds of skills will help you when you're doing specific jobs in the industry. Because for one, it won't be as hectic because you only have one thing to do.
Yes.
But still, you'll still have multiple things you have to juggle in terms of hitting deadlines and also coming up with ideas. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And good luck on your thesis when it comes up.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. All right, next question. Ernest, would you like to ask your question if you're here?
Yeah, sure. What challenges do you see ahead in the animation industry, specifically for storyboard artists?
I think since previously I think we mentioned a little bit about feature style, quote in quotation marks, feature style versus TV style. I think in the future, or even slowly right now with streaming services, the line between TV boarding and feature boarding is slowly getting mixed. We have a lot of TV shows or series that are being boarded like features and demanding that kind of attention, where traditionally right now, TV boards are really fast paced. You need to work on the next episode as soon as you can, and they're like really, really tight deadlines. So I feel like in the future for board artists, it's going to be interesting to see how we navigate that line, because at the moment TV people often look for TV people and feature people look for feature artists. And yeah, I'm interested to see how those two worlds collide together, because when it comes to like shows, series on Netflix, all of those are being boarded so cinematically, and they're not all like your old Cartoon Network style boards. So yeah, I think that's going to be interesting to see how story artists adapt to that.
All right, thanks.
Actually, on that topic of feature or versus TV animation and the different styles, Tim actually had a really good question. Do you want to ask your question, Tim?
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for saying that really quickly.
It was so relevant.
Really curious about, like, could you elaborate a little bit more on like the major differences? Is it just like the way shots are chosen? Is it cinematography or lens choices that makes it, you know, quote unquote feature versus quote unquote TV?
I can't say specifically. I know because there's so many series these days that are so cinematic that you wouldn't see in the past. And when you talk about, I guess the biggest extremes would be talking about primetime adult oriented animation, where it's really uh flat shots of your two kind of torsos talking to each other, versus
Right.
your Pixar films where like they're elaborate camera moves. I think the general idea is that TV has a lower, usually, maybe these days it's getting a little different, but usually TV has a lot lower budget than feature, and that causes you to reuse shots or stay in the same shot and only do dynamic movements if it's really necessary. But even sometimes the shows don't call for it, so you would omit dynamic camera moves totally, where in features it's more likely to have a more epic moment or something that requires more elaborate boards, I think. But again, I think these things are getting muddied these days with very epic series being told, like look at Arcane and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, actually, on that topic, with the increase in speed and production, Rayon, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Hello everybody. My question was like, since things like movie features and TV shows are being made more faster, how has that affected your well-being and your work?
I have to say I'm one of the lucky ones who have not experienced this too harshly yet. I have experienced crunch time on one of the films that I've worked on, and I've been able to navigate that space pretty well and kind of beforehand mentally prepare that, all right, there are a lot of changes being made and we're reaching the deadline. So kind of for me, mentally preparing myself helped me get through certain like overtime days and stuff. But I think definitely if they're pushing you way too hard, it's good to talk to someone. I know like HR or something about exactly how the workflow is affecting you. And I think these days with the Animation Guild, they're definitely addressing these issues, because a lot of productions don't have a good handle on how they treat their story artists. Yeah, So it's important to be mindful of what the guild's doing and also be mindful of your own mental state. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I know we already went over a little bit about the international artist process, like getting a visa, but Lauren Chu, did you have anything specific you wanted to ask, or did Clarisse kind of go over what you had a question on?
Yeah, I wanted to ask more about like just in terms of like how is it any different preparing your your stuff, your materials when you apply versus like a local who applies? Because I've noticed that it seems to be or rather did you meet any more significant troubles that locals usually don't meet because you're an international? Because there are a lot of submission forms I've seen where they'll ask you, would you need future sponsorship? And if you say yes, it's just automatically rejected. So I was wondering if you met, if it's yeah, how did you navigate that? And also and I know that you're currently in Singapore right now, so how does like in terms of like administrative, on the administrative side, how does it work in terms of do you need a visa right now to work in Singapore for a US company and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm in LA right now, so I don't.
Oh,
yeah, I still am on the visa that allows me to stay in the United States, but I can answer the first part of the question. So definitely when you're applying, sorry, my cat's being a little annoying. So when you're applying, yeah, you always see, well, you need future sponsorship, and I always click yes, of course, and you most of the time you get rejected until you get that one job, right? So it does feel sometimes like, oh, is that the reason I'm not getting the job? And that's difficult to say. Like, I still couldn't tell you if that is, but I've heard other stories of, oh, if you don't put your address as one that's in LA, they might filter you out first, or something. But I can't confirm that. There's so many rumors out there. Talking about struggles I face compared to Americans, I guess one thing that stood out was just as an international person, having another layer of things you have to prepare and take note of, where everyone has to work on their portfolio, everyone has to network. I think that's like the general thing everyone has to do, but international people, they have to make sure they're not breaking any rules with what kinds of jobs they take. Like someone local could take a part-time job at a retail store to earn a little bit of extra money, but as an international, you have to do not exactly, but you have to do jobs that relate to your major. You're not allowed to just take any job off the street. So that's like another limitation you have to navigate around. You have deadlines constantly. After you graduate from university, you have to deal with OPT, I think optional practical training for a year. And just knowing that you have to find your job between a year adds more stress to you as an individual versus it's a different kind. I can't say that locals don't have stress. It's just a different kinds of stress as well. Like they're worried about finding a job. You're worried about finding a job and also being kicked out of the country. So that's just yeah, it's important to surround yourself with your friends. And again, I've also wondered this while I was at school and asking international alumni how they navigate around this. And usually what I get is how important it is to surround yourself with people who support you and to really be on top of all that paperwork that you need to do, because yeah, it's tough when sometimes, especially if you're around a majority of locals, it's hard to navigate this mostly on your own. So, but we can do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, actually, since we briefly mentioned that a little bit on STEM OPT extension, Manal, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, so thing. So right now I'm on OPT right now. And if I get hired, do I need to apply for the STEM OPT, which is the extension, or do the sponsor visa?
So that would depend on where you're working. So for me, Skydance Animation Studios, they're an E-verified studio. So, and there's several of these. E-verified studios are allowed to extend their international employees who are under OPT, because animation somehow falls under the STEM category, and you have to check first with your company if they're e-verified. Some other examples that I know are Netflix and DreamWorks recently. I think they're e-verified now. So that's good to keep in mind when you're looking for a job. When you're looking for a job after school, is to kind of aim for those e-verified places. Like, yep, Pixar is nice, but they're not e-verified. You know what I mean? So yeah, if your studio or company is e-verified, they can help you apply for a STEM extension. If not, you would have to look at H-1B option or the O-1 visa option.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
All right, we're really on a roll with the questions about international artists. So to keep going on this topic, I think Brian had a really good question about pay. Do you want to ask that question?
Yeah. How do you know if you're getting paid enough, and how does working international affect your pay?
Great. So I cannot speak from personal experience, but I do have some friends who are working from overseas right now with the company. Since I work in LA, I'm pretty much treated like anyone who works from LA. So my pay is pretty equivalent to my coworkers who are also kind of younger to the industry. And when it comes to pay, it's important to keep talking to your friends. Like, I know sometimes it might feel taboo to talk about how much you get paid, but it is important because everyone deserves to get paid well for the hard work that they do. So it's a good way to find out if you're being underpaid, or if you're being paid well. And another thing that's handy is on the Animation Guild website, I think they do release the general pay of every single job in the industry, and kind of where you should stand. And sometimes when you're negotiating with a new employee about your pay, that's one thing I've been advised to look at when negotiating. If you're going for a revisionist job, they have some general revisionist pay on that website that you could refer to, and you would know that, okay, I should be paid around this much. I think talking to some friends who are currently working for the company overseas, they do have different contracts. I personally haven't asked how much they are getting paid, but to my understanding, in general, freelance employees do get paid less than in-house, because I think there's a thing where if you're an in-house employee, if there's downtime on your project, you could get pulled to another project really easily, and they could hand you out and you could be moving anywhere. But if you're a freelance artist, it says in your contract you're working for this film or this show, and it's not as easy to move them around, so they would in general get less pay, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. Have I answered the question?
Thank you. Thank you. Those are really great points to like consider, like versus freelance and contract. Sometimes Glassdoor could also be a good resource too.
Glassdoor, yep.
Ryan, would you like to ask your question? You could pick whichever one you would like to ask first.
Oh yeah. Actually, my next question like was going to be about like I guess show running, but like honestly, like I kind of feel like my third question might be like probably like more important than like that one. So yeah. So I think like the next question that I want to ask was when you were starting out, kind of like I guess just like some of us here, at what point or like when did you know that you were ready to break into the industry? When did you know that you're ready to break into the industry? Like when was it like I guess in your earlier days, like when you realized that like I think I've hit a point where like I feel that like I'm ready to start applying for entry level. And I kind of like I'm like a bit curious because like I'm kind of like planning on like hoping to I guess like hopefully break into like the industry like an entry level. I think like as a story artist like either like sometime later this year or like maybe hopefully early next year. But like I'm trying to figure out exactly like when like do people usually know that like I feel ready?
That's a wonderful question. I don't think you'll ever feel ready 100%. There's no time when, at least personally, if it comes to anyone, like that's great. I'm sure that could happen. But for me personally, I've never one day or finished an assignment and like I'm ready now. I will make a portfolio. I think I came in day one from Singapore here just with the mindset, all right, after first year I'm going to get my first internship. I'm going to do it. I didn't get one, but kind of my mindset was there where any opportunity I get, I'm going to apply. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to look at my portfolio and see what I can improve. And as I'm in school, I have teachers that I show my work to, and constantly I'm improving the work that's on there. I'm listening to advice here and there. Second year, again, like, all right, this is the year I'm going to get an internship. If I get a job, even better. And I don't get anything. And again, it's the whole cycle of, all right, this year I didn't get a job. Let's look at my portfolio. Why? Let's keep improving. And even after graduating in fourth year, I couldn't tell you that, oh yeah, that was when I was ready to get that story artist job. I just think every year I wanted to get a job. Also, I guess the stress of being an international student. But every year I wanted to get a job, and I kept on working on my portfolio. And you're going to keep improving constantly, and everyone says you improve the most when you're on the job. So even now I'm improving. I look at I drew a cat when I first got this job, and then later on I drew the same cat again, and I looked at it and I was like, dang, I couldn't draw cats like when I first started this job. And yeah, so you're gonna constantly be improving, and I think that's the main thing. I think it's not so much am I ready to be a story artist specifically, but it's more, am I ready to start a job? And if you are, just keep applying. Just no matter how your portfolio looks like, keep applying. Every time you improve something, every time you switch out an old story for a new one, send it to that recruiter. Yeah, I think that's how I would approach it.
Actually, wait, keep applying like whenever you make like something new on your portfolio. Because I think I kind of remember like once talking like hearing from like another story artist that's says like if you don't feel your like portfolio is up to par, or like I guess like if it seems like a little bit too amateurish, and I guess like if you keep applying with that portfolio and it's I guess not doesn't look ready, then like I guess like that could kind of like backfire a bit, because like then like the studios or the recruiters that you're showing your portfolio to like will be able to like will like will know like I guess like how your portfolio looks, and like I guess like how like um or like they remember how it looks, and then like they say like, oh, like this person like keeps um I guess like this person like keeps like applying and like still doesn't have like I guess like um substantial or like sufficient skills that we're looking for, and like um they keep doing that, and like I guess like they'll probably immediately write it off, or like I guess like that's kind of what I like heard.
Dang.
So
Recruiters like that would be terrible in my opinion. I think don't keep sending your portfolio if majority of it is the same thing you just sent in. For me, I would go, there's like kind of a season, at least when I was at school, the season to apply was before winter, or for spring, for fall, for summer kind of thing. So I think my main goal was to sometimes like shoot for the spring term or shoot for summer. So for me, it was revamping the portfolio towards those seasons. And I wouldn't just switch out one story, because I think usually I would, you know, every year I would look at my portfolio or talk to people about my portfolio and see like a lot of things could be improved. And it's not, I've never been in a scenario where, oh, this is working perfectly, but just this story doesn't work. And not so much the story doesn't work, it also comes down to draftsmanship. Every year I see myself drawing more and my draftsmanship improving. I feel like I could revamp or come up with new stories that showcases my draftsmanship and new like skills and perspective and things like that. So I think it's updating recruiters on your portfolio when you do have a significant change in it. So that's not like every month or every 2 months, just whenever it's in a good place. And when you create your new portfolio, that's the best you can do at the time. So I wouldn't worry too much of thinking like, oh, this is an amateurish portfolio because you worked your hardest on it. This is your current skill set. I don't think it's crazy to present that to the industry at that moment. And then recruiters who would just like, oh, I remember that kid, they couldn't draw back then. And then now if they present the same recruiter with a portfolio that has improved so much, I don't think a portfolio that didn't work a year ago or something would cause you not to get the job. And if it does, that's very strange to me. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. So going along this hypothetical, so you make your portfolio and you submit it and then you get the job. So Ernest, your question was actually pretty good about what it's like to be an early storyboarder.
Oh yeah, sure. I could ask it. As a storyboarder, what are the expectations in the first 3 months of your employment?
So I think the first thing that I remember was getting the story, getting me up to speed with where the story was at with the film. And I can imagine with any show, it would be introducing the show to the story artists, because they wouldn't assume that you've watched every single episode or you know anything about it before you get in. So the first thing was they would send me kind of like a welcome packet. It would be filled with character designs, the latest script, backgrounds or research that the team has done. So I would be looking through all of that and knowing, okay, this is the material that they have. I start sketching out the characters and finding a shorthand to draw these characters. And then you would have your first meeting or assignment with your head of story or director, and slowly you would obviously have a lot of questions at the beginning about the show, and it's not expected that you read all the welcome packet material and you just know everything, because the story always changes and your heads of story are there to kind of help you through that. Any questions you have, any specific, like, oh, what is our main character all about? Or are they kind of this kind of shy or this kind of shy kind of thing, for example. And yeah, it's kind of the first few months is getting used to your characters, understanding the story more. And that's gonna be done through getting assignments as well. Like if you are not sure how the character would act, it's all about talking to the director and heads of story to get used to all of that. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
That's nice. And actually, on that note, when later down the line, there's a crunch time. This is a good question. Amiel, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah. Let me swallow this rice. Okay. How is it you're experiencing your first crunch time? Like, what's it like during crunch time versus like normal production, and how do you manage?
Well, it's interesting because I work from home right now because of the pandemic. So I have to say it does feel lonely because when you're not in crunch, at least I was very lucky to have the team that I did that really wanted, when we did come together, we would talk about movies. Sometimes they had like one day in a month where we would come together and talk about anything that wasn't work. So it was nice to bond that way. And also at the beginning, there was a lot more time for all the story artists to get invited for pitches, for other people's like sequence pitches. But once crunch time hit, there was no time for production to kind of organize those meetings. So I wouldn't be invited to pitches because they would just want to know what the director thought. And then we had no time for these like very casual get-togethers. So I guess it was definitely more lonely, but workload wise for me, just because I think because it was my first job, I was very excited and just happy to help. And everyone, even though I didn't talk to everyone as often as before, I could tell that everyone was in a crunch and everyone was kind of working towards that deadline. So there was still at the back of my head that camaraderie of, oh yeah, let's get to the finish line. It's going to be great when we get it to the finish line. So yeah, kind of like a good mix of excitement. And when you are working hard, it's like, it's for a good cause, it's for cartoons. Yeah, kind of balancing all those emotions, I guess. So it's important. It's nice. I think I was very blessed to have a good team. Yeah.
Thank you. I've never heard that before.
All right, so it is getting kind of towards the end of our session. So I'm going to just ask one last question, but I thought this was a really good question to end on. So Brian, is that how I say your name properly?
Like to infinity and Brian.
Okay, Brian, perfect. I thought your question was really great. Do you want to ask it?
Yeah, so I wanted to get to know you more as a person in your work. So I want to ask, what genre or stories would you like to tell or focus on? And if you could, what would you like to change when it comes to being a story artist or a storyteller?
Wow. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I've always been attracted to fantasy. So I think if I had the opportunity to create a story, it definitely have some fantastical aspect to it. And recently, I don't know, I was definitely introduced to all of this or films with Lord of the Rings. And I love all that high fantasy where you create the culture, you create how things look like, the architecture. But recently, I'm also really into little bits of fantasy that take place in reality. So like everything would be a modern site, but then there's just one thing that's kind of weird. So yeah, that I'm really drawn to those kinds of stories at the moment. And was the second part what I wanted to change, what I would change?
Like about storytelling, like as a story artist.
I think, what would I change? Plenty of things. I don't know. There's so many kinds of stories to tell out there. So I feel like there's so much we can explore with animation. And I feel like still at the moment, animation is in its little bubble of what kind of stories we're allowed to tell. And, you know, with certain things like Netflix, people are like, okay, we can branch out animation a little more to more adult themes. But at the moment, for me, it seems like when we do explore adult themes, it has to do with violence, it has to do with sex, and that's what it means to be adult, you know? So I feel like I don't know, I'd love for animation to explore more mature stories that, I don't know, that kids can still watch but appreciate on a different level when you're older. I don't know, I just feel like at the moment we are kind of stuck in a bubble still a little bit, and when it's adult animation, it's like everyone thinks of, I don't know, Family Guy or Love, Death, Robots, which there's some good stuff in there, but kind of, I feel like we have a lot more to branch out in, and hopefully with streaming we'll be allowed to.
Actually, I'm curious, are there any like animation or stories that you take inspiration from where you're like, oh yes, this is what we need more of?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know.
Oh, really? Oh.
I mean, I love like any Ghibli stuff is great. I love how just on the surface of it all, so many Ghibli films, they don't take the time to introduce you to the world. You're just kind of in it, and you have to follow this character in that world. The character isn't like Harry Potter, who doesn't know anything about the wizarding world, and you're learning about it with Harry. But in a lot of Ghibli films, like for example, House Moving Castle, Sophie doesn't really, like all of a sudden there's a witch at the hat shop and she just has to deal with it. She's not like researching where do these witches come from, or like people tell her there are witches. It's just kind of this world set up. So there's something about that I really appreciate, where what's it like to just introduce a world to your audience organically without the main character holding your hand through it all.
That's true. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you on that one. All right, then. Oh, is there a favorite cartoon other than Studio Ghibli? Maybe a little bit more on the animation side.
At the moment, I'm really into.
She's on fire.
Yeah, that was
It's all
rapid.
good.
Sorry, I didn't know I unmuted. I thought it was backwards.
Okay.
Pretend I'm not here.
No, you're good.
It's a lovely reaction to.
Yeah.
Yes.
A show that I discovered recently with my boyfriend was on HBO Max called Smiling Friends. It's by Adult Swim, so it's definitely a little bit more out there, but I haven't laughed that much in a long time. And especially the first and second episode, I don't know, there's just so much happening. I haven't seen something like that made, I don't think, where there's the main thing that's happening in the foreground, like your character's talking, but in the background there's so much stuff that you could appreciate and be entertained by, and before you know it, they cut to the next shot and you can't even process the funny thing that was in the background. I'd recommend that show to anyone who's into like Adult Swim type humor, but this, I don't know, there's also a narrative. So Smiling Friends follows like these two people that are part of a company called Smiling Friends, and they help put a smile on people's faces. and weird things happen. So that's pretty funny right now.
Okay, I'm convinced. I am definitely gonna check that one out.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a little bit more out there. So yeah, don't be too shocked.
And actually, we have one more bonus question by turn. Is it okay? Are you okay on time to answer like one more? Just one more.
Yeah, I'm fine if
Okay.
everyone else is.
Yeah, so Tim, did you have a question you wanted to ask? Just one more?
Yeah, this is a question just based off like portfolios and more based on feature, but how do you like narrow down what to board for a feature production or that will appeal to them? Like either emotional scenes, but what specifically is it? If that makes sense at all.
Yeah, so I had to learn or navigate that question at school. And I think at the end of the day, you want to tell or board a story that resonates with you. Like this is a story that you'd tell or that you'd want to see. So whether it's something inspired by your childhood or something that makes you laugh, or a moment that you feel like, oh, this would be something I want to see boarded out. I think that's the direction you want to hit when you think of ideas. I'm always thinking of like, I don't know, something that I'd want to see. Like I love fantastical stuff, so some of my ideas start there, with a mythological creature or just something magical I want to play with. I know when I was at school, I did talk to a couple of Pixar instructors kind of preparing for that internship, and they were giving me assignments a little bit like, oh, board a scene that has a lot of suspense in it, and like, oh, I wouldn't want to see something so suspenseful. Like that wouldn't be something that comes into my head immediately. So that's also an interesting way to board. But at the end of the day, even though it's something like, for example, suspenseful that I wouldn't immediately think of boarding, the themes in it all come back down to me. For example, the suspenseful sequence that I did was kind of inspired by my time in Japan when, at nighttime and the convenience stores that were open. So it was set there. It was set somewhere that I knew that I could kind of draw out and imagine the scene. So I think whatever you choose or whatever's thrown at you, kind of think about something you care about, I guess.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. It has been the allotted time. So thank you so much, Clarisse, for having this talk with us. It was really, really informative and also a lot of really good information for international artists on the visa application, which is terrifying. So thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure everyone's like super excited that they got to talk to you. Is there anything you wanted to say before we sign off or anything?
Just good luck, everybody. For fellow international people, you got this. Yeah, that's all I can say. And to everyone, like, keep working at it. There's always room to improve. Yeah, and that's kind of the mindset I had moving forward, finding a place in the industry. So yeah, you got this. Good luck, everybody.